Being able to complete the climb to mastery requires the proper nutrition. This is why it's important to take in a potent blend of electrolytes that is in tune with your output and brings strength to your goals. This potent blend is only found in salt electrolytes. Salt targets your depleted electrolyte levels with a boost of hydration and health. It gives your body the baseline recovery it needs.
All right. We sorted out the problems. We're back again. I was getting ready to play this one. These guys. Welcome to Inside BJJ. I think this is episode 402, but I'm not positive.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Episode 400 just snuck up on us. And normally we try to do something special for that, but we're just like, yeah, it's
another show.
Yeah. Let's hope we don't mess up.
Well, the crazy thing is, I'm sure you remember, you used to have an app.
Yeah, it's still out there, but if you have it on your phone, you can keep it. Like, it still works. But if you don't, you can't go download it.
Okay, because I had that app back in the day.
I still have it. I still use it.
I don't think I have it anymore on my phone.
I got that from Libsyn when I first started. When I signed up with them in 2012, they didn't have like a bunch of shows.
Right.
And so they treated pretty much everyone like, hey, this guy's a professional dude. He needs an app. And so I'm like, yeah, I do need an app. Y'all are right. But yeah, man, welcome to Inside BJJ. Make sure you support Salt. Inside BJJ 15 to save 15%. And I have a good friend of mine, actually the first friend outside of my brother-in-law that I made when we moved out here to Nashville, Joe Spinell. Welcome to the program, sir.
Well, thank you. I think I told you that story before, but it is pretty funny. So I'm not a real social person. I'm polite when I'm in public. I'm not. So when I say that, people think I'm an asshole in public. I'm not. I just, I'm polite, respectful, but I'm not out to necessarily make friends.
Yeah.
My wife is.
Yeah, mine too.
So she comes home one day. We pretty much just moved here from Knoxville. We moved to Franklin. And she comes home and she's like, "Oh, hey, I met this really nice lady." I'm like, "You went shoe shopping."
Right.
How do you meet people? And just previously, she met another friend at Target. I don't know. Anyways, she's like, "Yeah, really, we were looking at the same shoe." And I'm like, "Well, that means you have a lot in common, I guess."
Yeah.
I don't get it.
We both like pumps.
Yeah. And she's like, "Hey, you'd really like her husband. He's like a former military guy, real, special forces dude. And you're really going to like them." I'm like, "Oh boy, when are we going out with them?" Because to me, it's like, I had a friend one time, actually one of the guys I train with now. I said, like, "Oh, I'm an introvert." And he's like, "No, you're pretty extroverted." And then he stopped me. He goes, "Well, let me ask you a question. When you go to a social interaction and you leave it, do you feel drained or you feel energized?" And I said, "Yeah, because I am social. I'll talk to people. I like to have conversations. I like to learn about other people." But he's like, "When you step away, are you drained or are you energized?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm drained. I can't wait to get home and just relax." And he's like, "Oh yeah, you are an introvert.
Yeah.
You're an introvert. That's so,
Yeah.
Some people get jazzed when so I kind of avoid that. So anyways, going out with other people that I don't know, it's almost like work in that conversation. And I know it's like, I've got to be, it's like going to a tournament. It's like, I got to perform.
Right.
I don't want to disappoint anybody. Right.
Yeah.
I don't want people to know how dumb I actually am. So, and she said, you know, her sister-in-law owns a jujitsu school. And I'm like, you hear that all the time. I'm like, okay, is it jujitsu or karate?
Japanese jiu-jitsu.
Yes, it's Japanese
right.
jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, it's real. And I said, well, what's her name? And she's like, well, I don't know. I said, we'll find out. Tell me when you find out. And she's like, oh, her last name's Freeman. And I remember we were in the car at the time.
Yeah.
And the thing about my wife, you can disagree, but you can't be definitive.
Okay.
Like if she says, she comes up with some wild idea, like, oh, we're going to Spain next week. I'm like, no, we're not. It can't do that. I could say, oh, let's talk about that. That sounds fantastic. Let's talk about how logistically we're going to make that happen when I'm already scheduled to work, right?
Right.
So the definitiveness is something that it's a trigger.
Sure.
Unfortunately, at that time, I wasn't on my game, and I said, no, it isn't.
No, it isn't.
No, it isn't.
That's not their last name.
And that's like you. And she said, yes, her husband's Tim Freeman. They own like a gym up there. And I'm like, no, it's not. Because I already listened to you. I already knew who you were. And she got pissed and she like looked it up and she's showing it in my face while we're in the car. I'm like, oh, dude, that's him. Really?
That's
who that. Yeah. So I already knew who you were beforehand because of the podcast.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, when you were doing the podcast, there weren't a lot of podcasts out.
No.
Community was really small. Community's growing. It's still small relative to other.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
It's growing.
Sure.
But that is just absolutely hilarious. So when she said you guys were moving here, dude, I was like, just like, so excited.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Man.
I was like, dude, he's moving on. That's awesome. That's so cool. Where's he going to open up his place? You should, you know, I had all these ideas where you should open up, and you know how difficult that was moving to
oh man,
the Nashville area and trying to open up a gym or just finding a location.
We looked at 20 places. We made a trip out in May, and we were going to move in July or the end of June.
Yeah.
And the plan was we're going to go out there for 3 days, and I'm going to leave with a contract at
in
least
3 days
in my hand. This is what I thought.
Yeah.
And I had like 20 appointments scheduled, and I went through all of them, and I didn't find a spot.
Yeah.
And some of them were promising, and then some of them, when they found out I was coming from California, it was like they stopped calling me back. They're like, nah,
we're good.
This place I got sight unseen. I hadn't been here. I just saw a picture of the outside, and I kept going like, nah, there's no, it's a business building. Like, there's nothing in there. And I was desperate. So I called the landlord and said, you have like a pictures or a video? No. Well, can you just walk through with your cell phone? And like,
yeah.
And she did. And it was perfect.
Yeah. The gym is awesome.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
It used to be a yoga studio. It's front desk, cubbies, had the black stall mats laid down. Everything was set up. We changed the paint, but beyond that, it was even these cubbies here. Everything was here.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was all set up already. So
yeah, you'd be surprised how many like docs that we hire or people that just come from out of town. They will buy houses that they have not actually walked through.
Wow.
Just because the market is so tight right now.
Man, there were 2 houses for lease in Franklin when we were looking.
It's nuts.
And we just picked one. We're like, let's just get that one.
This is discourage anybody to come here.
Yeah, don't come. It's terrible. It's no good here.
Listen, I lived in San Diego, grew up in San Diego. As you know, I did my undergrad in New York. Went to medical school and residency in Pennsylvania. So we haven't been everywhere, but we've been
around
a little bit.
Yeah.
And besides not having the beach here, this place is amazing.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It took me probably 2 years to decompress from the California pressure cooker craziness.
And how do you feel when you go back to visit?
Especially to Stockton, I think I can't believe that I was one of these maniacs. Yeah. Just drive in, get the fuck out of my way, and like a gun in my fanny pack. I'm like, Jesus, man, what are you doing?
So our kids, I have 3 boys, so I'm just saying. So I have 3 boys. And so my wife and I grew up in 2 really rough areas in San Diego, neighboring cities. And they grew up hearing all these stories about how bad Oceanside was and how bad Vista was and drive-by shootings. And so at one point we took a trip to visit some friends and we're going to drive them through our old neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Like let them. I mean, these kids, they don't.
No, they're good kids.
They're not living across from a meth house.
Right.
My apartment complex, we were in the right bottom corner, the upper apartment. There was a girl that shot her boyfriend there. We had a meth explosion up there.
Jeez.
I mean, it wasn't the
a lot of activity.
Yeah, my mom used to, when after when I got into medical school, I remember coming through the front door, and Amy just looked at me and she said, "Yeah, your mom's coming to live with us." And she, because we had Jackson at the time and things were going to get kind of crazy, my mom used to sit there and occasionally would cry about being so regretful about where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Like she would apologize profusely. And
yeah,
it wasn't ideal. So we're going to take him back here. We want him to see what the hard life was like.
Yeah.
Dude, Oceanside's changed.
Yeah. It's not.
They're cruising around like, yeah, this looks really rough. I'm not telling you, there were hookers right on that corner.
Now there's tourists on beach cruisers.
Yeah, there was like two of those nasty porn theaters downtown, and there's strip clubs and pawn shops, and now there's coffee shops selling vegan scones.
Yeah,
they were able to see one place. We went into Vista and we drove. My wife was like determined that she was going to see this apartment that they spent a little bit of time living in.
Yeah.
And that place is still rough.
Yeah, Vista can still be rough.
Yeah, it's got its rough areas.
It's a little more inland. The further you get from the beach, kind of the more dicey it gets.
But it used to be so bad by the beach.
Yeah.
Tons of homeless folks. They just weren't doing anything to build it up. And now they have. So and now I probably couldn't even afford to live there.
You know, it's funny you say that, because in our past life, before we made a decision to move out here, our plan was to move to Carlsbad. We're like, we got to get down.
Carlsbad's always been beautiful.
We got to get to Carlsbad. And I just would look at it. I'm like, if we move to Carlsbad, we're going to be not in Carlsbad. We're going to be in Vista. And we're going to be paying twice as much as what we're paying right now. And we're going to hate our life after a year, because you're not going to have money to do anything. Yeah. You're going to be just getting by. So we just stayed in Stockton.
But that's kind of the norm. The norm is to go month to month, just making it. And even if you have a good paying job and a good career, it's just a different lifestyle. So, you know, this fits us a lot better.
Yeah.
We're able to do things out here and give our kids some opportunities here that I don't know how I would do it. And especially because for physicians, I don't think the pay's not any better. You would think the pay would go up with the location. It doesn't in that industry. It doesn't. That's not necessarily the case.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
yeah, it's been a real blessing to live out here. And you know, when we went to my son's high school the first time and we did a walkthrough, this is a Disney TV show high school. Like this is not, I didn't even think I've told my wife several times, I did not know places like this existed. Downtown Franklin. I thought these were just
out of a movie.
That's what I thought. I'm like, this is just movie stuff. It's not real. I thought life was like downtown Stockton. Like this is reality. You know, it took a couple of years to settle in, but I sure do like it now.
Yeah, no, it's great. And especially when you mentioned downtown Franklin, everybody's so polite, and it's just, it's that Southern politeness. Yeah. Well, they'll talk shit behind your back, but to your face, everything's good.
Yeah. You know, I've gotten a little bit of that, but in general, most people have been good.
Yeah.
And I had to explicitly tell myself that I was going to work hard to get the chip off my shoulder, because when we first got out, I had the gym. I didn't have mats. They were on order.
Right.
And I've told this story before in here, but it makes me chuckle. And I met this guy, JD. I don't know if you've met JD. I met him at National MMA on the weekends. I would go down there and do their open mat. And he's a real good guy, real super nice, you know, long family history out here. And I had booked this big seminar for the grand opening with Boogie. Boogie was going to come out. Yeah, he's going to come out, and I didn't have mats, and it was getting close. I was getting close, and I'm like, man, I don't have mats. Like, how is this going to work? And one day JD called me. He's like, don't come to Nashville MMA this weekend because they're doing some event and they're gonna have everything. Like they were doing a motocross or something downtown Nashville.
Okay.
Maybe it was like F3. It was some kind of
Some type of big event.
automobile racing thing. And he's like, they're gonna have everything blocked off. Like
I remember when that came in.
You remember that?
Yeah, because whenever those events come in as an emergency department, we kind of have to prepare for them.
yeah, you get everybody like,
Yeah, we
like
just
an
make
idiot.
everybody aware, like when Bonnaroo's going on or when.
Right.
I remember when that was going on because they pretty much blocked off all of downtown Nashville.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like, don't come down here. So I told him, well, we can roll in my gym, but these mats that we use as a backdrop.
Right.
I'm like, this is all I
Right.
got.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, why do you not have mats? Well, COVID.
Mhm.
Company said they can't get the materials. And by the way, the Dahmer rep told me everything would be fine when he sold me
Oh,
the
of
deal.
course.
Oh, we're gonna get this turned around.
Because he's a good rep.
Yeah, 13 days you'll have them. Not true. So JD goes, man, I got a storage room full of mats that we barely used. And I think in the height of COVID, and it wasn't as crazy out here as it was in California.
Oh, no.
Not at all.
We were closed for like a week. if
Yeah.
that.
He had bought a bunch of mats thinking they weren't going to be able to train. So he was going to have these mats set up. And he's like, I'll get them, bring them over. We'll set them up. You could open your school and you can use them until your mats come in. And I told him, no way, dude. Like,
Right.
not interested. But I really was, I was like, no, thanks. Hung up the phone, thought about it for about 15 minutes, called JD back, said, man, I owe you an apology. I don't trust anybody.
Right.
And I'm just thinking, like, what are you trying to pull off here, dude?
Yeah. That's something that I've had such a hard time with, especially like having neighbors. Like I grew up in apartments, right?
Yeah.
They're neighbors, but it's not, everybody kind of has their own little world.
Yeah. You mind your own business more.
Well, I was told a long time ago, if you want to build relationships, when somebody offers to help, accept it.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, no, I'm the one to help. I want to be the one helping you.
Sure.
And it's still even hard now for me to when somebody offers something. Like we just went to a big wrestling tournament this weekend. And it was long, man. We left on a Friday. We wrestled Friday afternoon. The kids got out of school for this one. I mean,
Okay,
we
okay.
left at like 8:30, 9. We had practice from 6 to 7. And I love that because Amy doesn't understand really the intensity of wrestling season.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh God, the boys need their sleep. I'm like, yeah, they go to bed early.
Yeah.
We need to roll in the morning. We're going to have practice, get down to Memphis, and they start wrestling at 1 o'clock. Like we got to weigh in at like 12 or something like that.
Yeah.
And they start wrestling.
It's a
at
tight
1 or 2.
schedule.
It's a tight schedule. They wrestle on Saturday. They wrestle on Friday. They got to re-weigh in on Saturday. And then we wrestle on Saturday, and then we'll come home later on that night. So I got in really late last night, but our team parents are incredibly helpful. The team parents that we have, they bring in all the proper snacks. We don't have Snickers bars, things like that. They know what the wrestlers need in between their matches.
Right.
But they're also really good about taking care of the other parents. So at these wrestling events, which I wish they would do in jiu-jitsu, but this will never happen. At a wrestling event, you have something called a hospitality room.
Right.
And that's for the coaches and for the refs so they can eat throughout the day. And so they had breakfast already there. And we have one parent, his son just won preseason nationals. He's my middle son, Eli. It's his training partner.
Okay.
Peter Severino.
Okay.
I think you saw his match.
I know him.
Peter
Yeah.
is he's the kind of kid that you want in your gym.
Yeah.
He's personable, he's friendly, and he's a beast, and he's very technical, especially for heavyweight.
Yeah. He's a real technical wrestler for his size.
So good.
He
So
is,
good. And
yeah.
such a good person. And his parents are the same. So his dad, Joe from New York, he comes rolling in. I just ate breakfast, right? He comes rolling in. He's like, hey, Dr. Joe, get over here. He's like, I just went to Chick-fil-A, get you some breakfast. And my instincts was, no,
Yeah.
I'm good. I can eat. I can always eat.
Yeah. I could stuff another one down.
And but just by accepting that from him, I'm like, okay, I'm building this relationship. And I know it sounds minor and it sounds kind of dumb, but it's something that I would tell that to my kids, Like
Right.
it's just accepting somebody's gesture of kindness starts to build that relationship.
Yeah.
And plus I really wanted the biscuit too. But but I didn't need it. But that's a hard thing that I've always struggled with, even in jujitsu. You know, I'm always like the first one to be like, hey, let me help you with that. I want to help you with that. Hey, come on over. We can work on that.
Right.
But when somebody's like, hey, hit me up because I can help you out with X, Y, and Z, whatever. Man, I don't want to instinctively. I don't want to do it.
The default answer is no.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
and I'm trying to change that
you.
about myself. You know, I mean, you've offered for us to train here, and it's so hard to take. You always feel like you're taking advantage of somebody.
Yeah.
But I would.
You would do the same. Though.
I do the same. Though.
Yeah, I get it.
It's
I get
so bizarre. I got an issue with my brain or something.
Yeah.
But I find that it's not an uncommon thing, and it's the same thing I tell my kids too. You know, and by letting somebody help you, by accepting their offer of kindness, you're building that relationship, because you don't want to be like your old man who gets to be 50 years old and look at the relationships I could have built, but because of my own issues, I didn't.
Yeah.
So build these relationships. You know, the kids, like at wrestling, this was something that Eli was dealing with early on. We'd go travel and the kids were like, yo, Eli, come on, get over here in the room. We're hanging out. He's like, oh, no, I'm hanging out with my dad or whatever. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Go hang out, build your relationship.
Yeah.
And I think it's harder now with kids playing games and being secluded and being on their headphones, having that community to actually have face-to-face interaction with people.
Yeah.
And building it that way.
I think you're right. And I understand that thought process. Yeah. Very much the same socially too. Like going home from an event, I feel like, oh my God, dude, I need some like quiet time. I can't, like, if I have to do, and my wife is extra social, same thing.
Oh yeah. She has that thing going on Wednesday.
Yeah. She has things going on all the time. And we've met so many people. Oh, we're out at Mellow Mushroom Pizza, and she talked to these people and she's getting the pepper shaker, and now we're going to go out. Now we're going to, you know what? So
we were at a tournament and Stella, were you at, can't remember if you were there or not. It was when Nate beat, the kid from Independence. I've known him since he's a little kid.
I was not there.
I can't remember the kid.
I think I was in Vegas.
I'm so sleep deprived right now. I can't think of the kid's name.
Yeah,
yeah, you were in Vegas. That's right.
Yeah, I was at the PGF.
Yeah. And so Leo. Okay, Leo's a stud.
Yeah.
Leo is, I've told you guys before, Leo is, it's good. And so I'm watching Nate's match with Leo and I'm like, holy shit, he's winning. Nate's winning.
Yeah.
So when the match is over, Leo stomps off. He's pretty pissed. Nate's really happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I come on over and I'm gonna, because I know Stella doesn't know everybody right now. I'm like, do you know who Nate just beat? That's a major win, you know?
Yeah.
Who's she talking to? Leo's mom.
Of course.
And they're like besties now.
Yeah, of course.
And now they have this event on Wednesday for all like the wrestling moms to get together.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's got the gift, man.
She does.
Yeah.
She's my secret weapon as far as that goes. And when she was into jujitsu and kind of training and at the gym all the time, she knew more people in jujitsu than I did. She was like connecting with resources and people that I didn't even know yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have that in me that way.
Yeah.
I'm more of like, I'm going to sit over here in the chair and do my thing. And then if somebody approaches me, then maybe I'll join in. But
yeah, I think that comes from me being a little, I remember when I was younger, trying too hard.
Yeah.
And then walking away saying, I sounded so stupid just now.
Yeah.
Why did I say that?
Too self-critical, probably.
Yeah, and then you draw back.
Yeah.
You're just like, you know.
Yeah, I feel you. So it's been a big change out here, but it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah.
To live out here. And the South has been completely different than what I thought it would be.
What did you think it was going to be?
Man, I got to be real. I thought it was going to be a bunch of cowboys and hillbillies. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
And I think that's that California bias that you grew up on the West Coast.
We do have that though, just outside of Nashville.
You do, I know, which I actually really appreciate. Like I told Stella last night, I said, you get like 30 minutes outside of Nashville and you get in the sticks pretty quick. Yeah. Pretty quick.
Well, you know, this is a bubble that we live in. But when I go to work, you know, we have a large catchment area.
Yeah.
And
What catchment area? What does that mean?
so what I mean by catchment area is how many people come to our emergency department from surrounding areas.
Got you.
So because we're a transfer center. So like if there's a trauma in Kentucky, it might come to us.
I see.
Because there's no trauma centers around. And you know, the surrounding places around Nashville where they don't have an emergency department, well, they might have one, but the person doesn't want to go there necessarily. It's a really small emergency. They'll take the trip to come in for their belly pain, for their whatever.
Got you.
Right.
Right.
And I tell Amy, man, you are in a bubble. You want to see real Tennessee? Come to work with me one night.
I do. I have heard that, and I do believe that. I think Williamson County in general is kind of like locked in, you know, and you get that. You start driving around the other outskirts of Nashville, and you're like, this is not like Franklin or Brentwood. Even when you tell people where you live, I live in Franklin. Oh, yeah, okay.
You live in Franklin, not Tennessee.
Yeah. Then I live in a townhouse. Like I gotta like hold on to that one edge. Like I'm still tough. I'm still from the streets.
Yeah, it's different, but I think every place kind of has that, you know.
Sure.
It's just my perception of Tennessee was very much the same as that. But we originally moved to Knoxville, and I was at the University of Tennessee there. And Knoxville's kind of similar, not as nice. I couldn't move back there now after moving away, but it was good. It was nice.
Yeah.
But when we came to Nashville, it was like a whole different. I'd actually reviewed the hospital I'm at to approve them for a trauma status.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I was on the state board where you go to hospitals, and when they want to become trauma centers, you have your checklist of things that the emergency department
Interesting.
needs. And so I came there, got to know everybody. I was like, wow, this place has their stuff together. This is pretty nice. And then, of course, they put us up. And so we got to do all the typical
Nashville stuff,
right?
Yeah.
And it might have been a couple months later. I just told Amy, I go, what would you think about moving to Nashville? She has a totally different perception of this. She'll tell the story and say, I came in and said we're moving, which was not the case. I swear to God, it was not the case. I will just agree with her when she says this. But and my biggest concern was, where was I going to train?
Right.
Because I was with Samuel Braga in Knoxville, and he's just absolutely amazing.
Right.
Amazing instructor, great with the kids. Really bond. He's, you have certain instructors that are really good with adults and not so great with kids, and vice versa. And then you have some instructors that aren't good at all. He is, and he's there for every class. I mean, 6 a.m. class. I mean, it's his life.
Yeah.
And moving away from that was the only, damn it.
Yeah.
About moving out of Knoxville.
Yeah.
And that was the hardest part, moving here, and like, where the hell am I going to train? What am I going to do? Can I find a good place for the kids?
Yeah.
Because they've always been the primary concern. I can train anywhere. But my boys, it was like, man, where are we going to go where it's going to be a really good environment for them?
Especially when they're young.
When they're young, because I think the biggest mistake that parents, coaches, especially coaching in wrestling, but parents make is that they think that they need to go to a place where their kid is going to become like the next world champion. And what you should be doing at that age, in my opinion, is just having them build a love for jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And that doesn't mean competition. A lot of kids, the idea of competition, a lot of kids need to grow into that.
Yeah.
They don't have that when they're younger. And they don't need to compete at like 5 years old. They don't need to compete at 10 years old. That needs to come from them. Like I heard an interview with like Jeff Glover, and I remember he was with Dean Lister. They did a podcast somewhere, and Jeff was like, no, if kids don't want to do jiu-jitsu, they don't. And I like listened to that. Amy was listening to it at the same time, my wife. She goes, see, they don't need to do jiu-jitsu. Jeff Glover says they don't need to do jiu-jitsu. They don't want to do jiu-jitsu. They shouldn't do jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, okay, well, I take that same approach with school then. And my kid says he doesn't want to do math. Are we not going to have him do math?
Right.
And I told her, I think you're getting something confused. Doing a martial art, doing something for self-defense is what every young woman and young man should do. It should be required. In my opinion. Doesn't mean you got to be great. Doesn't mean you need to be a medalist. Doesn't even mean that you need to compete. And I think that's where the confusion comes into. I think training's not an option. You should train. But if you don't want to compete, you don't have to compete. You shouldn't be
Right.
forcing a 12-year-old to compete if he doesn't want to do it. That's the number one way. Ben Askren at his academy, it's from what I understand and what's been in the community, he doesn't have his young kids compete all that often. They come and they train, they have a good time, they learn some wrestling, they play some games, and they build a love for what they're doing. And the quickest way to squash some kid is by having them compete. Because what do the majority of kids do when they compete? They lose.
Yeah.
There's only one winner.
Yeah.
You got 10 kids in a division. There's only going to be one winner.
Yeah. Everyone else is going to go home with a loss.
Everybody's going home with a loss. And that's something you have to learn to deal with. Yes, they can learn to deal with that in the gym. And when they're ready, they can learn to deal with that in competition. But your goals when they're young, it should just build a love for what they're doing.
I think you're right. And when my boys were little, I didn't make them compete. If they wanted to compete, for sure, I would be like, yeah, let's do it. And if there were kids in our kids program that wanted to compete, yeah, let's do it. But there were stretches where neither of them wanted to compete. And like, not a big deal. You don't have to be good. You just come to class twice a week, have fun, put your time in, and it's going to suck sometimes because the girl that's 11 is going to kick your ass. And, deal with it, dude.
Right.
Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
Like, life is going to kick your ass too. So, I didn't push too much in that regard.
Yeah.
I think that's true. And and I still think this is true. My kind of underlying approach was that most of these kids are going to quit.
Oh,
at some point.
Vast majority.
They're not going to train from 5 years old to 25 years old.
Right.
They're going to quit. My hope is that they're going to have a really good experience with it. And maybe later in life, when they're looking for something else to do, they're going to go like, man, that was really fun.
Yeah.
I had a good time doing that. I should check that out again.
Yeah.
That's my hope versus like my coach was such a hard ass that I hated every moment of it. I dreaded walking into class. I don't want the adults to feel that way either. I don't want anyone to be in the parking lot hyperventilating because they're going to come up into class and it's going to be terrible. Now, if you're an elite level competitor and that's your goal,
it's different.
The training room's going to be different for you than if you're just a dude that's training twice a week.
Yeah. And I think it's different at different ages too. I think it's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
And just like classes aren't the same for the tiny tots as they are for the adults, the goals of at least in my opinion, the goals of the school, the instructor, the coach, whoever it may be, it's going to be different depending on the individual, and that's dictated, of course, by their age.
Yeah.
Teenagers are a little different, and it could be an individual. There were times where my middle son, Eli, was doing well in class, but there were some other things he was dealing with. And I said, listen, we're going to get over that. We're going to do a tournament. I'm going to sign you up for this, that. No. No, we're going to do this one because this is a challenge you need. Didn't mean that we were signing up for a tournament every week.
Right.
But it was like, hey, man, we need a new challenge. You don't have to do this all the time, but we're going to do this one. Okay. The whole team's doing this one. You're going to do this one. And so being able to adjust too, I think is important.
Yeah.
And then as they get in their teenage years, if they do get that taste for it and they want to do it, then it's okay. Well, training's got to change now. Training's going to be more intense. Tell me what your goals are. Are we sticking to these goals? Okay. If these are our goals, this is what we got to do it. You told me the goals. We can't change it now that we showed you what you got to do it.
Right. Like, my goal's a little different.
Yeah, we got to sit down. Let's go over our goals. Let's dream big. I always say dream big goals because we have goals that are simple. And I think everybody should do this. You have a simple, achievable goals, right? You have something that's measurable. We were talking about that earlier. Have a goal that's measurable, that's correctable, and is reasonable. And we have those. But let's talk about those dream big goals. And we'll 3 of them. 3 long-term dream big goals for the season. And you can dictate your season, whatever it is. It could be a year. Because in jiu-jitsu, we don't truly have a season, right?
Right. We just train.
Yeah. And like we did, like with Jackson, I said, what are our goals this season? The season being from like start of year to end of year. And you said, well, I want to be able to go to gold medal in IBJJF tournament with at least, I think it was like 5 or 6 competitors or 4 competitors. Because, you go to these as a juvenile, there's like one other guy. He's like getting a gold medal there. That doesn't count.
I mean, it does, but I get it.
Yeah.
You can only fight the guys that show up.
Right.
But you would like to show up where there's like multiple dudes you can fight.
And it was like, I want to beat this guy I haven't beaten before. And There's a couple of other, there's one other thing. And I say, okay, are we good with these goals? This is what we want. This is what we want to do. All right. As a father, I'm going to keep you committed to this. You set these goals. I didn't set these goals. But what I can do is I can set what you need to do to achieve these goals. And these are non-negotiable. You can't change it because, oh, well, you know, I don't want to quite do that much work.
Yeah.
No. That's not how we grow as individuals.
Right.
You don't set the goal based on, oh, I'm going to have to do X amount of work. You set the goal and you do what needs to be done to achieve that goal. And you may or may not achieve it. And I think the process of us doing that at a very young age, you know, he was struggling in a genetics class just recently. And he could have came and said, hey, the instructor's an ass. This is a really difficult class. All he did was, he said he was frustrated. And I'm so, what you frustrated about? He's like, I need to figure out how to get this down. I'm not getting the material. I'm not understanding it. I need to figure out what I need to do to get this down. That approach to the problem is a direct result of how we used to set goals before.
Yeah.
It's the exact same, because in the process of setting those goals, we did have to analyze and say, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? How do I correct it? You know, I'm responsible for my actions. And so that ends up translating into his real life. And will one day translate to when he's at work and something goes wrong at work. It'll translate to a relationship when something's wrong with that relationship. And as a parent, that's really what you want.
It's a valuable tool.
Yeah, it's incredible. You can't pay for it. It's something that has to be built. It has to be built early on.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I think you can get it later on in life, but it comes at a higher cost.
It does. It's always harder to mold. Everybody's moldable. It's just we solidify a little bit more as we get older.
It hurts more.
It does.
When you got to make those kinds of changes. Yeah, I agree with you. I really like the combat sports for those kinds of things. I think team sports are great. I played some team sports growing up and I had a great time doing it. But there's always an out. There's always the ability to go, well, you know, I had a good game. I struck out 9 batters, but my first baseman made 2 errors and we lost. Versus I committed to this tournament. I trained for it for however long, and I went out and got my ass kicked or not. You know, sometimes it went good. I was always a mediocre level competitor.
Right.
You know, I started jiu-jitsu at 27. I knew I wasn't going to be world champion. My goal was like, can I get a blue belt? Is if I could get,
that's a great goal.
In 2005, there weren't that many blue belts running around. There was some, but
you were lucky if you found a purple brown belt running a class.
The guys I trained with, we had 1 brown belt and 3 purple belts, and everybody else was either white and there was a couple blues. And the purple belts were like gods to us. It felt like they did magic. And if you look at the level of like the things they were doing now versus what purple belts.
Oh Lord, it's so, and people can't, well, I'm sure they can imagine, but you can't truly appreciate how much it has changed.
Yeah.
I can't put it into words.
Yeah.
So when I was in San Diego, I owned a kickboxing gym, and I had 1 blue belt that got his blue belt from Hoist because he would drive up to Torrance and back.
Yeah.
And we had Montero Jiu-Jitsu, which was the only black belt. Fabio opened up. So we had 2 competing black belts. And then Roy Harris got his black belt.
Okay, yeah. That's an old OG right there, man.
Yeah. And so Roy would come to my friend's karate school and do afternoon classes, I think like twice a week. And it was no gi. We didn't wear gi. Roy would come in wrestling shoes.
Fuck, that guy's a monster too.
Yeah. The thing about Roy, which was different about everybody else that I trained with, and all respect to Nelson. Nelson's amazing.
Nelson Montero.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He's the kindest. He represents, I've never seen the guy upset when I was younger. He always had a smile on his face. He was excited. Like what you see on social media is what you get in real life, at least my limited interactions with him.
Right.
But with that being said, and I don't know how his teaching is now, it was much different. That room was much different. It was like, oh, because I'm just a wrestler coming into jiu-jitsu, right?
And how much wrestling? You had a lot of wrestling experience.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, for California at that time. Yeah, I mean, I started when I was 12.
Okay.
which that's late out here. That's late now in the big scheme of things,
right.
but clubs were pretty limited. I wanted to wrestle, little kid, naive kids want to wrestle in the Olympics.
Yeah,
and,
for sure, man.
but yeah, wrestling was my life. It definitely, wrestling, karate, kickboxing, that whole combat sport gave me such an identity that kept me out of trouble.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about it was, even the kids that were in trouble, it was almost like they were protecting me in a certain way.
They respected it.
Well, they were like, no, you don't want to do this. No, you
Right.
don't go with us to this.
Interesting.
And like, you got something going on. They used to come watch me train when I get ready for a fight.
Yeah.
At the kickboxing gym, they'd all sit on the bleachers and come in the afternoon. It was great, man. It was good. And it really gave me that sense of identity. So I had that as a background. And Nelson's was like the first school that I'd went to in Del Mar. And the way that we did it was a really super hard warm up. So you would be dead by the time you start rolling.
Yeah.
And then guys would catch you with stuff. And it's like, okay, well, what is, like, a triangle? Like, I know you're doing something, but I'm not sure what this is.
Yeah.
And now I'm tapping. I'm like, oh, well, what was that? Oh, that's a very tough position, my friend.
A very tough position.
A very tough position. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. Can you tell me, like, what do I do to get out of that position? So, and Nelson's an amazing instructor, but Roy did something different. I felt that he was very technical in a way that I didn't experience with anybody else.
Interesting.
And I don't know where that came from. I don't know that's how his mind works. I don't know if this was him analyzing the moves and adding his own things into them, but he was very much like, okay, the grip is like this for this reason. So what Roy was doing for me was he was building me as becoming a better instructor.
Oh, interesting.
The way he taught.
Yeah.
I mean, even wrestling back then was like, okay, grab the wrist and you go here and here's your half and here. Then we didn't talk about digging the elbow deep. We didn't talk. I mean, there's all these little technical things that changes your move to an okay move, to a good move, to a great move, to a world-class move, right? And there's small little adjustments. He would do those things. He would talk about I don't know, he just had a different approach.
Yeah.
And now I think that's common now, right? But that wasn't really common, at least with the people I was exposed to coming up. Or maybe I wasn't hearing it. Maybe my brain wasn't ready for it. That's very possible.
I think you're right. I think you're right, because I came across Roy Harris and immediately it was like, this dude's different. I used to write him these big long emails.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I would send him these emails asking all these questions. He would respond, but he wouldn't give me answers over email.
Oh, I'm surprised he didn't send you a novel back.
He came on the podcast, and for me, I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm talking to Roy Harris.
Yeah.
Like I just, and I was always fascinated with like his tests, like a blue belt test.
First guy to do that, as far as I know. He kind of adopted that karate, like, we're going to test these katas, but it wasn't katas, of course, it was technique.
Those tests were tough though. Those weren't like, pay your $300 and you're going to pass the test and you're going to walk out with your next belt. It was like, I'm going to like put you in some real tough shit and we're going to figure out if you can actually do this or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was really impressive. I feel like he doesn't get enough credit.
No, I don't know why that is. Maybe because he doesn't have any people, or maybe well-known competitively wise, maybe because he now is, a lot of the older guys do, they focus more on self-defense.
Yeah.
That's a pretty common thing that, folks that have been in our community for a long time, they kind of drift away from the competition scene. They talk more about, and he's always been a mix of like kickboxing, Jeet Kune Do,
or martial artist,
jiu-jitsu, wrestling, a true martial artist.
Did Roy Dean, wasn't Roy Dean one of his students?
Yeah. So Roy Dean, his first black belt was Matt Stanzel, who honestly, and Matt's the one who would teach at my school. He got his blue belt in Torrance, and Matt was a really nice guy. I don't know what happened to Matt. He had a couple of MMA matches. He opened up North County Fight Club with Jeff Clark. I know Jeff Clark's still around. And then Roy Dean. Roy Dean became the most well-known because of social media and his videos.
Especially in the beginning. He seemed to really like know how to fine-tune that and put it out there.
Yeah. And he's kind of an acquired taste, I think, for some people, just because of his cadence and how he teaches.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he produced some very knowledgeable guys, and maybe not successful competition wise, but that doesn't matter. So I don't know why people don't know who Roy Harris is now. I'm sure he's still teaching now, and
I bet he is.
he's got to be, you know.
Yeah.
But it's funny how the zeitgeist of our community kind of follows different people for different reasons.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with competition, obviously.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's hard. Our sport, there's people like Brandon that are trying to really, I call it an entertainment, a participant sport. We have entertainment sports and we have participant sports. So like entertainment sport would be like football, basketball, baseball, because they're very simple. Everybody follows them. The culture is to follow them. But things like gymnastics, ice skating, people watch that when the Olympics are on, right?
Right.
But you don't follow people. Tell me one ice skater out there. No one knows.
Couldn't tell you.
Because it's a participant sport. People only watch it heavily that participate in it.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu is very similar to that. And I don't know how we break out of that. I don't know if we ever will break out of that, but I know how we won't break out of that. We won't break out of that with IBJJF rules that when a competitor looks at the crowd and goes, hey, what up with that call? And gets a penalty point for inciting the crowd.
Yeah.
When you can't talk to the ref.
Right.
When you can't, it's not going to happen. I mean, holy Moses, at least wrestling's making an effort with rule changes to get people more excited about it. Because, you know, they recently had a rule change where takedowns now are 3 points. Used to be 2 points.
Right.
And folk style wrestling is now 3. The idea of that, at least from what I understand, is to have more action on the feet where people understand what's going on. Listen, 2 wrestlers get on the ground and they're fighting for position. You don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And it looks very boring for people. But you have two guys fighting for a takedown. Everybody can relate with that. You don't need to know anything about you get the idea. That guy throws that guy.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
And so when that becomes the focus of the rule set, then you're going to have more of that because it's worth more. Yeah, it makes it more exciting. Will it ever become a spectator sport? Probably not. It'll always be a participant or an entertainment sport. It'll probably always be a participant sport that you had to do it to truly be interested. But at least you're going to get some people. The best thing in the world is somebody who's never done jiu-jitsu, never done wrestling, who's interested in it. Remember when that happened with MMA? MMA, there was a time where the only people that watched mixed martial arts were meatheads.
Yeah.
Guys that did it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, I have multiple people in my neighborhood that probably know the fighters better than I do.
Right.
They follow it like it's football.
They never trained in their life either, probably.
Oh, hell no.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
But that's fantastic. That's what we want.
Yes.
You know, that's what elevates the sport to another level.
What do you think about talking about elevating jiu-jitsu to an entertainment level? I mean, obviously Brandon is doing some things with the PGF.
Right.
For lack of a better word, he's sportifying it in a way where there's like an entertainment value. I think the team aspect of it, because people understand that.
Yes.
They understand points and stats and teams and standings. And that's like a familiar thing they could lock into. Understanding the technical details of what's actually happening is tricky for people.
It is. But I think the more important part, and I don't know how you achieve this. I have ideas. I'll give it to you as an example. So like many things in my life, I don't communicate them very well to my wife. Well, I do. She doesn't hear them. So that means I'm a poor communicator, right? I'm a poor communicator. That's the truth. I swear to God, I tell her. So we had an MMA event local here that I was going to cover it as the fight doc. Apparently, I didn't tell her this. She didn't hear it.
Okay.
So she's pretty upset at this point because we were at Saturday night. Last thing in the world that she wants to do is go to a mixed martial arts event,
a local MMA event.
Yeah, and you got to understand my wife. She's a girly girl. You know, she doesn't train. She doesn't want to get her face busted up. She loves wrestling for the kids. She understands it.
Yeah.
Still, after all these years, kind of understands jiu-jitsu, but she's not going to sit down to watch a fight, right?
Right.
Only if her kids are in it or friends. And she's also a physician assistant. So I told her, I said, listen, I got to do the medicals on. I said, I have to go. If I don't go, they can't have a show.
Right.
So this is
right.
not this. We can't. This is we're not negotiating it. We have to. I have to go. If you want to go with me, I thought that was the plan. You're gonna go. She's like, I'm gonna go there to take blood pressures, and I'm like, yeah. Well, it's just for us to work together, man. I'm trying to make this fun. So we go. She has absolutely no interest in this, but she sits down. She's doing the meds for the fighters coming in, blood pressure, all that stuff. I come over. I do my exam. I say, hey, listen, you're gonna sit with me ringside. She was 100% invested. Why? She got to know the fighters when she was talking to them.
Right.
The secret to elevating anything is either knowing the team or knowing the people. When you get to know the combatants, and again, I don't know how we do this effectively, but if you have a friend that's fighting or ice skating or car racing, you're invested because you know them.
Right.
When we get to know the personality of the athletes, the Ultimate Fighter tried this. The Ultimate Fighter exposed you to these different athletes,
Right.
who they were, their personalities, their quirks, what their background story. Inside or the Inside UFC, the little shows that they do.
Yeah.
They do that, but nobody really gets to see that unless you're already invested in the show, right?
Right.
So how do we get people out there where you get to know who Jet Thompson is? And not just me, like people.
Right.
Man, I want to see Jet fight.
Yeah.
I don't
do
know
too.
anything about this grappling stuff, but that kid's pretty cool. When you get to hear their stories, you get people invested. And what happens is that builds and that starts to roll like a giant snowball. But it's how do you get it started? How do you expose? So I agree, the rule sets and things like that, I think those are incredibly important. I think what I know a lot of people didn't like the way Craig Jones did his scoring for the CJI. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was fantastic because it was something, even though the 10-point must system is it's garbage, but people understand it.
Yeah. And
any way you do that, it works well. Like collecting the points, people understand that you have to have something that's already in their mind so they can run with it. So they're not starting. If you make it related to another sport, it's easier to connect with it. But I think the key is knowing the athletes, especially when you don't understand the sport. If you know the athletes, that will get people invested.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that if the viewer has to use too many brain cycles figuring out
too much work,
it's too much work.
No.
But if you can go like, it's like this, oh yeah, I get that. I know that.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you on the story because you have to tell a story. I think one of the reasons why CJI popped so big is there was this guy who was taking on the evil empire of ADCC. And that became this dramatic theme that everybody wanted to tune in to watch.
Right.
And it grew beyond just a norm. Craig did something really smart in that he made he did the podcast circuit. He was on the big shows and he kept telling the story of what he was going to do, how he was going to take this on and how he was going to make this change. And people wanted to see it. They either wanted to see A, is he going to do this? Or B, is it going to be a train wreck? Is this just going to, because he could have crashed and burned.
And the train wreck factor is a huge factor.
Oh yeah.
It's huge.
It's giant.
This weekend when we were in Memphis for this tournament, I don't know, it came up multiple times because we're talking pure wrestlers, the majority of people that are there, right? Everybody knew what CJI was.
Yeah.
They know that Nolf was in it. They know that Kirkfeld was in it. They have no idea what ADCC was.
No.
Even though it was the same weekend. So him also bringing in other athletes, Pat Downing, the three wrestlers that he brought in.
Yeah.
It actually got wrestlers excited about that. And I wish we could see the stats because you can only make adjustments if you know what those actual stats are. My thought is that played a major role because the wrestling demographic is ginormous.
It's bigger than the jiu-jitsu demographic for sure.
And that's the thing that people in the jiu-jitsu world just can't wrap their head around.
Yeah.
It's like One of the great things about jiu-jitsu, if you go back to its roots, is here's this thing, judo, and they do these things, but we're going to do these things. We're going to change. We're going to adjust. Now, why did they adjust? Did they adjust because they knew they were never going to be as good as takedown? I mean, that's Jigaro Kano, his original tournament that allowed him to get in with the Tokyo Metro Police Department. He designed that tournament. So what did he do? He designed the rules. What was he expert at? Takedowns.
Right.
There were other jiu-jitsu schools out there that did everything from punches and kicks to groundwork. So why did he design that? He designed the rules because that's what his guys did well, and they win that contract, and everything takes off after that. So for whatever reason, how Brazil adjusted to what we have today, was it because they didn't have enough space? I've heard that excuse.
Yeah.
No, I think the bottom line is they were all learning from books. They had few instructors, and they developed a ground game, and they knew they were never going to be as good at the throws as the Japanese were going to be good at. So what they did, they were massively adjusting. Halls, what did he do? He massively adjusted jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu was always adjusting, always adjusting, always adjusting. And now we're in this really scary time where, at least in the gi world, are we adjusting? Are we resetting rules? Are we trying to, when was the last time we had a major rule change?
In the gi?
Oh yeah, you can twist towards the unattacked leg now, or the trap leg. Little technical.
They're all tiny technical.
They're all
things.
tiny. When's the last time that jiu-jitsu has looked at something wrestling is doing well and say, "Oh, we should do it that way"?
Almost. I always felt like from the beginning that the jiu-jitsu crowd and the wrestling crowd were like at odds with each other. Almost. The wrestlers would when I started training, if a wrestler came in, the consensus was, oh, he's just going to try to take you down
and smash you.
And then we're going to fucking triangle choke him or guillotine him.
Yeah.
And the wrestlers were like, these guys are just going to sit on their ass and I'm going to smash them.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I want to get your feedback on this, the no-gi side of things has started to bridge the gap between wrestling and jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And you're starting to see the influence of wrestling trickle into jiu-jitsu in a much larger way. Now, I think less, but it is happening. You're starting to see some influence of jiu-jitsu bleed over into wrestling.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. I mean, obviously, at a certain point, the rules come into play. And it's like, you're not going to pull guard in a wrestling tournament because it's automatic loss. Like, what are you going to be on your back? You're going to lose. But there's a lot of things from jiu-jitsu that would definitely work in wrestling. And we're already seeing the jiu-jitsu world, especially on the no-gi side, because it's a little more Wild West. It's
no-gi jiu-jitsu is where gi was decades ago.
Yeah.
When they were making those changes.
Right.
So we're in that developmental adjustment changing period. And we're not in a stagnant period.
And it's beneficial. Like, Craig Jones came in and started a new organization. When you start a new organization or you have a newer thing, it's much easier to move that ship around and make changes. Yeah. When you've been established for 40 years and you have this giant structure in place with people and departments and resources, and you can't just come in and go, hey, we're going to change all this, man. We're going to
no, you can't.
It won't work.
But I'd love to sit down with whoever makes those decisions and ask them, what are your goals? Yeah. Why does the IBJJF exist?
Well, it's a federation.
But it's not. Though.
I know. I know.
For anybody who doesn't understand that, a federation has an elected leadership. Okay. Every federation within the Olympic Committee, anything from skating to judo to wrestling, there's an elected committee on it. It's not a business. They do raise money.
Right.
But that committee is elected. It's not IBJJF's a company.
Yeah.
And if their goal is to, I don't know what their goals are. And so those adjustments, those minor adjustments, because they are well established.
Right.
Those minor adjustments should be, what goals do we have? How do we need to adjust it? And how does the rule set adjust to that? And that's exactly what, wrestling did 2 years ago with the 3-point rule change.
Yeah.
They sat down and said, What are our goals? How do we fix it? What are okay? We want it more entertaining. We want more fair for the athletes. Okay, what rules right now are unfair for the athletes? Well, going out of bounds is pretty subjective. We need to make it more objective. Okay, so if there's one little part of their body that's in bounds, they're in bounds. Okay, with these exceptions, and you have to have some safety issue. Those are adjustments that are based upon the goals of the federation or the committee or whatever you want to call it. And when you stop seeing that happening, it makes you just like, oh, where are we going here? And I'm only passionate about it because I care so much about the art. And if I didn't care, I'd be like, it doesn't matter to me. But my life is empty enough where this becomes a big deal to me.
You're laying in bed at night.
But you're right. The no-gi world is in that adjustment period right now, and they're so open to innovation and just rule sets and taking, I mean, heck, if they didn't do what they're doing, at some of these weighing in right before you step on the mat. I don't know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Why don't you just adopt what wrestling does and everybody weighs in more? And I know there are jiu-jitsu tournaments that do that.
Yeah.
But which one is better? Which one sets the goals for us? Are we trying to make it safer? What really? Why are we doing that?
Yeah. What are we doing?
Yeah. Why do jiu-jitsu matches? You could run a jiu-jitsu division pretty fast. Why does it take all goddamn day in wrestling? So I'm not saying wrestling doesn't have adjustments too.
Yeah.
But there's such differences where the two can learn from each other. Wrestling, you've been in wrestling tournaments. What's always in the background? Music.
Yeah.
It's not, and I've heard like, well, there's music on the background. You won't hear somebody say tap, tap.
Come on.
That's a ridiculous. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I like that wrestling uses whistles.
Love it.
Why doesn't jiu-jitsu use whistles to stop the action?
Because they're not willing to adjust tradition.
It's insane. That's insane to me. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So, it just, tradition is a wonderful and beautiful thing, but it also can kill you because if you don't adjust with the times, you get left in the past.
Yeah. And I think that with tradition, if you go back and you really trace things, like why did we start doing it this way in the first place? There's a valid reason.
Mm-hmm.
We did that because of this. We do this because of that. But the further you get away from those time periods, the definition or the meaning of the tradition gets lost, and it becomes like, well, because this is the way we've always done it.
Right. And that's never a valid excuse.
Never.
It just it's do it because I said, and maybe there's a better way. When it's like when your kids ask you, well, why are we doing it that way? Because I said so. I do this at work sometimes, and I make it real clear. If a nurse comes up and says, why are we doing this like this? I'm very clear to say, like, hey, we need to do it right now. Afterwards, I'll explain myself. We don't have time to talk about it.
Right.
And I think that's what parents mean by just do what I say, or they mean I don't have an answer. This is just what I want.
Right.
And I don't know why.
And I don't want to tell you that this is just what I want.
Right.
And I don't know why.
Yeah. Because maybe it's not even a valid reason in your mind.
Right.
So yeah, you have to, if you're not challenging your own decisions and making yourself your biggest doubter as far as your decisions go, they're going to be, you have to have confidence when you elect that decision, have confidence and go with it 100%. But the analysis of that decision, it's kind of like playing chess. Don't just move your pieces. Think about where you're moving them. But once you move it, you're committed.
Right.
Because you had time to think about it.
Right.
You analyzed it. And the more times you do it, the quicker you become at it. But just to do it because you've done it it's criminally stupid.
It's like an intellectual cop-out.
Yeah.
We don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
We don't want to change it. What do you one of the things that judo did is they got rid of the leg grabbing rules a few years back.
Yep.
And then they recently have brought them back.
Sort of.
In a different capacity,
yes,
but
yes.
But I think it's a step in the right direction.
But they adjusted. So they, the story, as you probably have heard it, why they got rid of the leg attacks. You had all the Dagestani,
right?
Just people that weren't really judo. They weren't. They, for a lack of articulate terms, they weren't judo.
Right.
They're putting on a gi. They're just shooting in and taking people down. I don't know how much truth there is to it, but I can imagine there's got to be some validity to that. Well, what did people do after that? I think it was that 2000, 2009?
Somewhere around that time frame.
And so, and it might have been later than that, but people were all up in arms. And then now what are you doing to the art? You've really taken the art and you've made it, oh man, you pigeonholed it. So this is why when people talk about jiu-jitsu becoming an Olympic sport, I'm like, well, we're kind of almost there as far as restricted we are, but I don't want us to become so restricted it no longer becomes
I agree.
Like keep it out of the Olympics.
I agree 100%.
It's beautiful to be able to go to that tournament with that rules and that tournament with that rules. And for us to become an Olympic sport, I mean, we would have to be unified and we would have to have a federation.
A real federation.
A real federation. And so by not doing that is beautiful because we hopefully will always continue to evolve. But judo looked at that, listened to the people, watched the matches, and said, maybe there's a middle ground here. And I love it. And who knows when another 5-10 years, maybe full leg attacks will come back.
Yeah.
But my understanding is you have to have a grip.
Right.
And you can attack the leg.
You can't just shoot a straight double.
You can't just shoot a straight double.
Right. What do you think? I was thinking about this morning on the way in, and I was pretty tired. This is a tired thought, but and maybe this has already happened,
right? Or
someone's tried it. I don't know. What if we threw a grappling event and we had a wrestling division, a jiu-jitsu division, in the gi, a no-gi division, a judo division, maybe a no-gi judo division, maybe sambo. Like we're going to put all the grappling arts and we're just going to treat it as a grappling tournament where we're going to showcase all these different forms of grappling and get these guys in the same room together. So the wrestlers can see judo and the judo can see sambo and sambo can see wrestling and wrestling can see jiu-jitsu. Do you think that would work? Or do you think that the individual disciplines are still too isolated from each other?
So let's not talk about the logistics of it and how difficult that would be. Let's get that out of the way. Let's dream for a minute.
Yeah.
So we're going to dream that we can do this. It would 100% work. And this is the reason why I say this. So it's like, oh, how do you know 100% it would work? Because we've done it. We've done it in a lower capacity, but we've done it. We do it in wrestling. So wrestling has freestyle, Greco, and beach wrestling now.
Yeah, that's true. It does have.
It's a USA. It is a USA wrestling event. So we're already doing it. Why can't we add? Why can't we add submission wrestling in there? We can do it, and it would be absolutely amazing. I think the only thing is it would be hard to call it jiu-jitsu.
Just call it submission wrestling.
Just call it submission wrestling.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a jiu-jitsu division, but that would have to be gi.
Which would be fine. I mean,
let's call it what it is.
Yeah. Gi jiu-jitsu.
Gi jiu-jitsu.
Which I don't have, even though I'm primarily training no gi, I trained in the gi for 11 years. It's fun to train in the gi.
Do you know, that would be absolutely amazing. Now, let's get out of our dream state. Logistically, you can make it work. You'd have to be really creative and very smart because it's hard enough to run one event.
Right.
But if you did it like they do in Fargo, which for those that don't know, Fargo is probably the biggest, it's one of the biggest, it's hard to say it's high school because there's junior cadets and seniors in there. It's one of the biggest freestyle and Greco tournaments and now beach wrestling. And actually, it is the largest tournament in the world.
They bring sand in to the location?
So, no, like we're going to have one. I think they're having one here, and it's going to be at some beach volleyball court out in Spring Hill.
Okay.
I forget what the name of the place is. But that, I don't think they bring sand in. I think they find places where they can do it because it's never on site.
I see.
That's the bummer about it.
Yeah.
You would have to, but again, we're dreaming, not talking about logistics. If we could do all that, it would take off. And you would be able to tap into each group would be able to tap into the other one's demographics, and we'd be cross training. We'd be growing. Imagine how much the sport, because the sport grows the more people you have in it.
Yeah,
ideas get innovated by the more people that have in it. You isolate yourself. Think about Japan. Japan isolates itself, keeps itself from the outside world. The outside world's growing because they're all working together. Japan is staying the way it's been for hundreds of years. And you have some, Matthew Perry that comes in and says, hey, I'm going to kick your ass because I have the technology to do it, do what I say.
Right.
And they're at his mercy. We don't want to do that as an art. We have to expand and let people come in and get ideas flowing. I mean, this is what makes Eddie. This is why I think Eddie, people hated him when he first.
Yeah.
And why he was so, like, if you were going to do your people of innovation throughout jiu-jitsu, there's certain people, and it's funny. It's like, well, I'm not saying what that person did couldn't be replaced by somebody, but the fact of the matter is that person did it.
They're the one that did it.
They're the one that did
Yeah.
it. He would have to be on that list of people that changed the landscape of jiu-jitsu.
I 100% agree, not just because I'm an Eddie Bravo guy, but because he made a significant contribution. I think Eddie should be a red belt eventually. That's based on the standard of you have had to have made a significant contribution to jiu-jitsu. Yep. How did he not? I mean, he didn't start no-gi jiu-jitsu. We know that, but in terms of like organizing a team,
would it be where it is now without him?
No, absolutely not.
Maybe somebody would have done something he did, but I don't know when it would have happened, because you needed the right guy with the right vision, with the right personality to step out and say, I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
So that type of growth will happen more often the more people you have. Yeah. We're lucky it happened when it happened.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
and it happened a long time ago, and it sat not dormant. I think Eddie.
Well, things take time to grow.
10th Planet was growing as an organization, but the acceptance of 10th Planet in the rest of the jiu-jitsu world was very like at an arm's length.
Would you, if you were to say there's 5 people that innovated jiu-jitsu, would you put Prince Tahoon starting ADC in there also? Or,
I mean,
because ADCC I think played a pivotal role in that, but I don't know.
Yeah. I could see an argument for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, if you put a number of like 5 people, then who are we taking out?
I know.
That's what makes it tricky. But in terms of ADCC is still a very big deal. I think it totally has a place in jiu-jitsu, whether people like Mo and the current folks that are running it, or Flo, or any of that shit. You can't deny that ADCC has been the marquee event for no-gi athletes for 25 years now. Back when there was nothing for no-gi, like that was Worlds basically for the no-gi guys. That was it. And in a way, it still is. Like, winning ADCC is a really big deal.
It's much bigger than winning IBJJF no-gi.
I think. Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, and guys do no-gi IBJJF.
I mean, I have a bronze. I got 3rd place in no-gi.
Yeah.
I have no business having any credibility whatsoever as a competitor, as an adult, as a masters competitor.
Yeah, I think no-gi Worlds was mostly like guys taking off their gis and grappling.
Exactly.
That were already doing Worlds and all the other stuff. And not even all those guys would do it.
Right.
No,
a lot of them wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I can't wait to see what ADCC does to help grow with their opens.
Yeah.
Because I know it started, but this has got to be just the beginning. Then it gets scary about how big do they get, and do they become like the IBJJF? But at least it's another place where kids can compete. My biggest thing is where do people get to compete to grow?
Right.
And we just, especially for kids, there's not enough kids tournaments around.
No, there's not, especially no-gi. It hardly exists.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few. It's actually a challenge to get kids to come in to 10th Planet Nashville and train no-gi.
Yeah.
In general. And one of the challenges is that you have one set of parents who want martial arts. They want uniforms, they want belts, they want bowing, they want respect, they want discipline, they want all those things. And I get that. And then there's another set that sees it and goes, why would I take my kid here? This is just watered down wrestling. I'll just take him to the wrestling club in town.
Right.
So it's hard to define it in a way to parents where it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, we're pretty much in that. So I run the competition team at my gym, and the kids competition team. And we're all gi for a number of those reasons.
Yeah.
We kind of just fell into it. I wish I had the time to do a second, because we only do one competition class a week.
Yeah.
And our kids are very successful. We're incredibly successful kids program. I wish we could just do one. I just don't have the bandwidth to do a no-gi for them. And I tell all my kids the same things. Once the middle school season starts, I tell every single one of them, okay, you know, I'm not going to be here that much, because during the next, I mean, I won't be back in there until probably March.
Yeah.
And I tell them all, y'all sign up for wrestling now. Doesn't mean you miss Saturday's class. Doesn't mean you can still do jujitsu, but it's time to sign up for wrestling.
Yeah.
Mainly because they get so many more reps in. They get so much training in. And then if they want to compete, then the competitions are plentiful.
And I think wrestling is a martial art. Even though it doesn't have the trappings of a martial art, it's a martial art.
Yeah. So, I mean, because what do you define a martial art as?
Well, I think in the American mind, a martial art is belts and
bowing, discipline,
dojos,
yes, sensei, no sensei.
Right.
It's like everything that we see like in Cobra Kai, right?
Right.
But I mean, you think about it, all it is it's a systematic form of combat.
Right.
Whether that is how you shoot a firearm, you know, if you want to pick up a pair of nunchucks, and it's still, I'm not saying it has to be a valid one.
Right.
But it's a systematic form of combat.
I'm surprised they let kids wrestle still in school, to be honest.
Wrestling is the only combat sport. And I tell this to my kids at the beginning of every season. I have certain patent little things I have for my kids and for my parents. I want them to understand that this is the only combat sport that is allowed in the school system.
It is.
It's a privilege to be able to do this.
Yeah, it is.
And I think one of the secrets is if we could ever get no-gi jujitsu, and I'm very specific about this, no-gi jujitsu into the school system. And I say no-gi because gi would be too difficult with the belts, with everything, you know, with the uniforms. But every kid could do no-gi or submission wrestling. The school system would never accept that name. So we would have to keep jujitsu. Submission wrestling, they're not going to accept that name.
Yeah.
That's a little too harsh.
And how, you know, the school is going to balk at, and parents are going to balk at seeing their 14-year-old get choked.
Yeah. And it's
like, how do you do that? How do you do that?
In this day and age, how do you do it? Right. But when you think about wrestling, there's so many things in wrestling that are so brutal, and there's no way to tap out.
Dude, I see stuff in wrestling every single weekend where I'm like, how is this kid's shoulder not?
Yep.
And luckily these guys are great athletes. They're most of them are hyper flexible.
But your refs are very variable. Some will call potentially dangerous, and potentially dangerous is when an athlete's in a position where it can cause serious injury in the mind of the ref. Some of these refs have jiu-jitsu experience. Most of them don't. Yeah. So what do they really know about joint locks?
Not much.
And some refs will call it early. You've seen this with what is commonly called an arm bar in wrestling.
Yeah.
The West Coast, they'll call it a chicken wing.
Yeah, right.
But not to be confused for you jiu-jitsu guys, when you hear arm bar or the bar, we're not talking about straightening out their arm. It's like putting the arm behind their back with your arm through. There's some refs that'll call that very fast, potentially dangerous. Keep it legal, right? You hear them say that all the time.
Yeah.
And there's other ones, the kid will be screaming.
Right.
And the refs just
wrestle
let it go.
Wrestle up.
There needs to be an accepted form. The accepted form is to take your finger and swing around. So that means injury. Very few kids know that. Like if you look at the ref and you go like this, that means I need an injury timeout.
Right.
How are you doing that when you're laying on one arm, your other arm's behind your back, and your shoulder pops?
Yeah.
We need to have something more than just screaming.
Yeah. Right.
But that's something that wrestling can take from jiu-jitsu.
Strangles too. I mean, I see kids in like, man, and I know a kid who has jiu-jitsu experience. I'm not talking about Nate, but another kid on the team that has jiu-jitsu experience. And I talked to him yesterday. I'm like, dude, you were choking that kid. And he's like, yeah, it's kind of one of the things I do. And I'm trying to, it's like, you can do a one-handed strangle.
Yeah.
Without a gi on.
Now, the arm, it's supposed to be called if the arm is underneath the chin.
Yeah.
But
it was deep under the chin.
It was deep. They sometimes won't because they don't know. I mean, head and arm chokes, right? The Schultz, you remember the Schultz pinch?
Yeah.
Matt, not who did it to Almeida? Almeida got choked out by Matt Hughes.
Okay.
Matt Hughes caught him and basically,
Yeah.
head and arm, front head and arm. We call it a Schultz pinch because Dave Schultz, I think it was famous for it. That's a legitimate blood choke.
Yeah.
And they don't call him on that.
You could hit Darces.
You can hit Darces. As long as you have an arm with a head, you can make them pass out.
Well, I mean, that's like...
I mean, Eli's done it a few times.
And what if someone passes out? Is that a win?
Yeah, you pin their shoulders when they're unconscious.
Oh, you pin them when they're unconscious. That's brutal.
Yeah.
That is brutal.
It is brutal.
Like, it's not over. We still have to pin you.
That's something we need to adjust. Well, I guess it's just it's a natural flow of the sport, right?
Yeah.
Because the objective of the top guy is to pin the shoulders. I guess if he really wanted to hurt him, he could choke him out. Because you got some very naive refs. You got great refs and you got crappy refs.
Yeah.
It's just the way the sport is.
Yeah.
And I guess theoretically, you could get somebody in a scarf hole, a head and arm, put the shoulder across, pinch down, make them pass out and never pin their shoulders. I guess you could do that.
Yeah.
If you wanted to be super brutal, but hopefully they would recognize that.
Yeah.
But you don't know because it's not a part of the rule set. So the refs aren't really that knowledgeable when it comes to blood chokes.
Right.
They would say they are, but you're not. Unless you've done the sport, you're not.
You don't really know.
You don't know.
No, you don't. You're right. You're absolutely
luckily
right
we
about
do
that.
have some black belts that are out there in the community that are wrestling refs, and those are they tend to be the best refs, in my opinion.
I think you're right. They understand the safety issues with where the arms and shoulders are. They understand how the chokes work.
Yeah.
And every once in a while you see weird, like when an athlete on top in wrestling starts pulling the leg up and doing weird stuff. I've seen guys' knees where I'm like, oh my God, this is just...
Yeah. And you'll see guys, you see a lot of variability when they call potentially dangerous with that.
Yeah.
In college, sometimes, man, their legs are tweaked and they still won't call potentially dangerous.
Yeah. I guess the saving grace is in...
No.
But still, man.
Hey, all it takes is one kid to spaz and something pops.
That's it. Yeah.
And thank God it doesn't happen that often.
No, it doesn't.
When you look at it, we had a really bad injury last year. Do you remember that one? And Nate was there, but he did the freestyle event. We had a kid that got suplexed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That school's not doing that tournament this year.
They decided not to.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
So we had a kid that was unfortunately not that experienced. I think it was his first year. And of course he goes up against a kid that's pretty seasoned. And it's freestyle, so the safety rules aren't quite the same as what they are in folk style. He gets suplexed back, hits his head, breaks his neck. Of course, this is the story that I had. I'm on the periphery of it. I wasn't involved in it.
Right.
But it was you can have a lot of fractures. Somebody can break their neck, and it's not a big deal.
It sounds terrible.
I know it sounds terrible. There's spine fractures and there's spine fractures. There's spine fractures that are stable, like the little bones that come off the back of the spine, off the spinal column. Those are attachments for ligaments. Those things, the spinous process ligaments, the transverse process, and the spinous process, those bones, they can break. You're good. No need for surgery. Yeah. Did you break your back? Yeah, you broke your back. Did you break your neck? Yeah. It gets a little tricky with the neck because there are some vessels that run through some of those. But then there's unstable fractures, and those are the ones that cause paralysis.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, that's what the kid had. And that's scary.
Yeah.
But you think about how many kids are competing. I mean, this weekend, we had 36 teams.
Right.
At least one kid in each bracket for 10 weight. More than that, more than 10 weight divisions. That's a lot of kids competing.
And I mean, look at high school football.
Oh yeah.
How many people get hurt, serious injuries in other sports? It totally happens.
Now I'm saying this without my kid being paralyzed.
Me too. Totally get it. Yeah.
So I can see how, like, I'm a big gun advocate.
Right.
I'm in Tennessee.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
I see a lot of people shot. Take care of a lot of people that get shot. We get a lot of gunshot patients in, but I never had a loved one shot.
Right.
So maybe would I change my tune? I don't think I would, because I'm kind of a logic-based guy, not an emotional-based guy. At least I tend to think I am.
Sure.
But you don't know. You're not in the situation. But overall, Yeah, there's injuries that happen, but there's injuries that happen with everything. The serious injuries don't seem to be quite as prevalent as people would be,
as you would think.
As you would think.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
What do you think about the UFC making such an investment push in jiu-jitsu? They've been talking about it a lot. They're going to do a bunch of Fight Pass Invitationals next year. They signed Mikey Musumeci.
Right.
They're flirting with Gordon. They brought him on to do commentary.
Yep.
The Fight Pass Invitational 9. They featured him in the crowd yesterday during the event, called him out. And, he got a little bit of a pop, which was like, he's probably the most well-known grappler right now. Not everybody likes him. Some people hate him, whatever. What do you think is going to happen with that?
So, like, remember when sometimes we do things that emotionally we go, yes, this is awesome, because it's something. It's just something.
Right.
We see this all the time, right? Remember the shoe bomber? The guy that had a bomb in his shoe and tried to get that motherfucker. That's why we all have to take our shoes off now.
Right.
Is there any real utility in taking off our shoes? Something got enacted that made people feel good. Doesn't make sense. The UFC Fight Pass makes me feel good. I like that. Damn it. I don't know if it's necessarily the right investment to help elevate the sport. The MMA demographic, that people that subscribe to the UFC, I don't know how big that is. How many people are we really dipping into by offering them something on there they may or may not watch? Like, I want them to do it. I like that they're doing it, and at least it's a try. And I'm glad it's with somebody else's money.
Yeah, of course.
Because it's not going to hurt.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
It could if they go, this didn't work, and then Dana White comes out and goes, jiu-jitsu's never going to be blah, blah, blah. We tried that. I mean, they're going to build some kind of reality show around it, which will hopefully tell some stories.
But the thing about their original reality show was on Spike.
Yeah.
If we do a reality show on UFC, oh man, is that demographic enough to get the snowball rolling? It might be. I hope it is. I really hope it is. I'll never say don't do that. But when I'm thinking about it, when I'm analyzing it myself, when I'm trying to be academic about it, it's like, if I had to bet whether or not this is going to be successful, would I or would I not? And I don't think so.
Yeah.
Especially because the way the matches are, like, we need to change. Like, I don't know, do it how Brandon's doing it. That part needs to be, when you're talking about making something as a zeitgeist, like in the natural thought of everybody, how it influences people, you got to have the perfect formula, and you need a lot of prep. You got to be prepared. You got to have a lot of luck, and it's got to be everything: the rule set, the financial investment, the way it's being exposed, the timing of it.
Yeah.
Is it happening during a presidential election where nobody gives a damn? Is it, I mean, it's all these little things that people don't think about. It has to be perfect, but when it is,
it can rocket ship out.
And we can see that with how the UFC, everything was perfect, right?
Right.
Everything was perfect. There was a basketball game going on that was a blowout, right? People weren't as interested in it. They start flipping around. They find it. Another person calls another person, person calls another person. So everything was like set. The environment was perfect. They were prepared. They had the investment. The timing was right. I hope that helps with UFC Fight Pass. I mean, the bottom line is the more events you have, the happier I am as a person.
Oh, yeah.
So emotionally, I feel better. Like having everybody take off the shoes, I feel safer.
Right.
Well, actually, I don't, but somebody does.
You got to get that pre-check so you don't have to take your shoes
Holy
off.
crap, do I need that pre-check, man? I'm telling you, I need to get it. But then I got to get it for all the 4 other little fuckers in my family.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think the kids can get it, though.
I'm not sure, but I always chuckle when I get to the airport and I see a couple where one has it and the other doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
And some husbands are like, "Oh, go stand in the regular line with you, honey." And some dudes are like, "I'll see you on the other side." Like, it's like, I'm going to pre-check, dog. Like, I ain't messing with it. Yeah. I agree with you. I think that it has to get out from behind a paywall.
Yes.
The paywall is
I guess that's the word I'm looking for. Right. That's that. Yeah, absolutely.
And that goes back to your participant versus entertainment sports, because the people that are behind the paywall are generally people who are participating in it. Like if
Right.
you have flow grappling,
Yeah.
you're probably a grappler, or
Right.
your kid is on there, or your kid wrestles or something. You're not just like a casual sports fan who's like, man, I really want
And
to.
you got to be a hard. I can't tell you how many coaches like this weekend. So we have something called track wrestling. I'm sure you're
Right.
familiar with
Oh,
it. Yeah, great, right? It's better than some alternatives.
Better than nothing.
Yeah, it's better than nothing. It's better than smooth comp.
Yeah.
And there's a mode on there that you can set, so it'll alarm you. It'll send you a text for when your team wrestlers up,
Right.
and you can also set it to give you the results. Do you have that on yours?
My wife does.
You know why? Because you guys have a Flow Grappling account.
Yeah.
You would never believe how many coaches they don't have it. So it's not only the person that does the sport; they've got to be damn invested.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I'm like, you don't subscribe to Flow Grappling?
A lot of people don't.
Flow Wrestling? You don't subscribe to Flow Wrestling? Yeah. So that paywall really, you don't realize how dedicated you have to be because we're talking about people that are at a weekend tournament.
Yeah. Right.
They're pretty damn dedicated, but not enough to pay whatever it is.
I was just talking to a parent on Friday night about that same subject. And he's like, do you guys have track wrestling? I'm like, well, we get it through Flow Grappling.
Yeah.
Because we have a Flow membership.
But you can only do that at Alarm if you have the membership. Like
Right.
Anybody can go to track wrestling.
Right.
Right.
But you can only get those alerts.
If you already, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Have an upgraded account, which is.
Track wrestling needs an app because they take you to a website and you got to like click on this and search the event and enter the event. And then if you do one little thing off, you get thrown off onto some other thing. And you're like, how did I get back? And you're like navigating some 90s website on your freaking phone.
Yeah, I always keep like 3 windows open.
Yes.
And then I'm like, okay, this is the Matt's assignments. These are our Matt assignments.
These are the brackets.
brackets.
Yeah, I do. I feel
But the cool thing about the brackets is you can click on the bracket and look at that kid.
Yeah.
Some of them, not everyone. And they track everybody's record.
They do
for the most
pretty
part,
good job.
Decent.
You
can manipulate that bad, by the way.
What sucks though is when the event pops off, and then there was the big event in Memphis going on,
right?
And track wrestling just goes.
Yep.
It's like, does it work for you? It didn't work. Can I get into track? The kids are like, we can't get into track. We don't know when our next match is. And
we that happened at Music City Nationals a couple years ago, and they had to go paper.
Oh,
it happened all across the country.
That's a nightmare.
So every wrestling event across the country came to a standstill at the same time.
That is
the paper system worked when it worked, but it's hard to go back to it.
Yeah.
And it was rough. People were missing. It was rough.
That's damn near impossible once they're used to the technology.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
It was really bad.
Well, Joe, man, thanks for coming on. I feel like we got to do this again. And I often feel this way when I have guests on that I really like and we have good conversation, because there's like so many more topics that I would like to talk to you about and go through, because I feel like you have a wealth of experience. You can articulate your ideas well and talk about them, and you're invested in combat sports, not just as an individual, but as a father, as a parent, as a coach.
I think that's the one thing that is, that's kind of, I think that's the one thing that people gravitated to our Instagram for. It wasn't me. It wasn't doing instructions.
It's watching your kids, dude.
It's watching the kids.
It's hilarious. Tell everyone about your Instagram.
Oh, it's Joe Spinell I was gonna say Joe Spinell at Gmail. Don't email me.
Too late, dude.
It's just Joe Spinell, and the Instagram started. I think like everybody, it's like, okay, I'll show this technique, I'll show that technique, and one day, Eli was eating some cereal or something. I can't remember what it was, and Joey just comes up. My youngest comes up behind him and throws on a rear naked choke.
Yeah.
And Eli's just continuing to eat, and then he slowly strips it off. And I come over, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" I don't even know why Jackson was videotaping this. Oh, I think he said, he goes, "I want you to choke Eli. I'm going to videotape it, right?"
Oh, yeah.
And so I come around, and I'm like, "No, you're doing it wrong. Don't put your arm out. We're going to sneak it in." And that thing, then we took a vacation to California. We went to, we did San Francisco, Napa, and then where we got married in Tahoe. We wanted to show the kids where we got married on this hillside. It started popping off.
Yeah.
It was like getting over 1 million views, and then over 2 million,
just
and
crazy.
Over 3 million. And then everything we would post after that was just, I noticed like people were interested in seeing the kids.
Yeah.
They didn't really like, I'm not going to teach a technique any better than anybody else. Like
Sure.
I might show something, but now even when I show like my little trick, somebody else is teaching the same damn thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we're so flooded with stuff. And a friend of mine said, who's in the entertainment industry, he said, you're not going to do instructionals better than anybody, but what you can do is show your kids and show training and get people to.
It's the story.
It is. And there's times we're doing a lot of them and there's times that we slow it down. But yeah, I think people, you can see the views. I think people enjoy that part of it.
They do. Yeah.
And I think for a lot of men, it's very nostalgic because what you see is what you get. We don't pre-rehearse anything. And that's why sometimes we don't have video because I don't
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll do a salt thing, like a salt promo or a promo for a sponsor. But most of the stuff that you're seeing is just at that moment. And yeah, sometimes we'll show something. It's like, oh, we got to redo it. Yeah, that was cool. Like show that technique. But if you see us, like if Joey comes up, he's like, dad, that's straight. Like that's them.
You're right.
doing
Right.
And so I think for men looking back at the times with our fathers, it's a very nostalgic thing to see. And I think for a lot of people, it just strikes a chord in them seeing that kid interaction and just like, God, I wish I had that at home when I was growing up, or that's what I want to do when my kid gets old. I get a lot of those.
Yeah.
I can't wait till my kid is like 6. We're going to do the same thing.
I'm going to choke him when he eats cereal.
Yeah. and if I can just show them a little bit of what jiu-jitsu does to a household, maybe we can get some people interested.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing I love the most.
It's like you can show them jiu-jitsu or you could show them what jiu-jitsu does.
Yeah. And what jiu-jitsu does is it takes, for us, it takes a shy kid who very difficult time interacting, gives them confidence, tells them how to deal with their schoolwork, with their relationships, with their goals. Listen, not that this is a product of me, it's a product of everything. We don't pay anything for Jackson to go to school. He got a scholarship on his own. Violin scholarship on his own. Dealing with difficult classes on his own. He's on cruise control now. He'll come and ask for advice every once in a while.
Yeah.
Great. That's what I'm here for. But I don't feel like we had to go back a step. But that's because of the lessons he learned, which is every analogy I have is wrestling or jiu-jitsu.
Right.
It's from this wonderful art that we've invested so much of our life in, which they say, well, it doesn't pay back. Yes, it pays back if you know how to use it. And so if even one person can kind of see that and see the right way to kind of, at least I don't say the right way, my way or a way.
A way, yeah.
That how it can help your children. I mean, what more do you want as a parent? You know, he was really torn up at the, you know, when he's going to go to college. He was making that college transition. And he was so torn up that he wasn't going to be able to train as much. And I told him, I said, listen, man, as a parent, and it was also had to do with his brown belt. He's like, I'm not ready for my brown belt.
Yeah.
I need to achieve more, you know, like I haven't achieved enough at purple. And I think he did great at purple. You know what he did at purple? He said, I'm going to go to this tournament and I'm going to wrestle. And I'm not a wrestler, but I'm going to wrestle. I'm going to do what I've been working all summer on this. I will not pull guard. And he didn't. And he lost a match because of it. It was a tied match, but he lost it because he insisted on doing it because that was his goal. I said, listen, you stuck to a game plan. You didn't think about the win or loss. You thought about the process. You're now ready for your brown. He didn't understand that.
Yeah.
Because I say it's not all, your skill level is there. You're beating up black belts. Your skill level's there. And now it's about your growth. But anyways, so he's really torn up. I'm not going to be training as much, whatever. I said, listen, as a parent, you've gained everything I'd want jiu-jitsu to give you. You had goals. You had people that you beat you went after them. You had this goal of double gold at you quadruple gold. You know, you did this. Every single thing that I'd want. You were scared. You were crying, but yet you competed and you did well and you challenged your fears. Everything that I'd want jiu-jitsu to give you, it's given you to this point. You don't need to compete anymore. That doesn't define you as a martial artist.
Yeah.
You've paid your dues. You don't have to do this continually. What you do need to do is continue to live the lifestyle. And you do that with everything you do. You do that with relationships, with schoolwork, with job, with pursuing your goals. That's all jiu-jitsu. And that's a hard thing. That's a hard thing for a young man to deal with.
Yeah.
But it's so wonderful to see the byproduct of that.
It's priceless too.
I couldn't pay for that. I could not give I couldn't give an endless amount of money to achieve that, because that was hard work and that was dedication. That was following the path, following the lifestyle, you know. I mean, this is
BJJ lifestyle.
Yeah. You know, and yeah, but you know, and so in any case, and now I see those byproducts with Eli, the kid who's pathologically shy. You never see how this kid, he used to cry before competing.
Yeah.
And Jackson would just hug him. We're going to do this. Get out there and show your stuff. And he'd beat the shit out of people.
Yeah.
Now this weekend, so proud of that kid. So proud of that kid. You know, very few, I can see his eyes water up at one point, but besides that, the nerves, dealing with it, and he still feels them.
Yeah.
But he knows how to deal with them.
He knows how to cope with it.
You know, and he realized mistakes that he made and said, okay, yeah, we're not going to do that again. Just the ownership and just that laser focus, that's not happening again. And he now is doing those same things, going to bed on time, on right, doing his schoolwork, saying I have to do X, Y, and Z. And most of all with him, learning to be a leader.
Yeah.
Because that's not part of his personality.
Right. He's
a sit back in the corner, let everybody else do
Chill.
everything. And seeing him interact with other kids, I think it's painful for any parent to see your kid not interact.
Yeah. Yes. As a parent of a particularly shy kid, it is. I get that.
Yeah.
I've actually seen Eli in my own interactions with him blossom out and change. Like the first time I had met your kids, Jackson was pretty talkative. Joey's like, you know, ball of energy. But Eli was like, I don't know you, dog. Like, I don't know what your thing is, you know, but over time, getting to know him and then watching him mature for the last, 3 years that we've been out here, he's come into the gym a handful of times, got to train with them here and there. Now, he, in the beginning, if he saw me, he wouldn't walk up to me and go, hey, what's up?
Yeah. He's afraid of looking stupid.
He's not like that now, though. Not with me. He's not. He's like, oh, hey, what's going on? And we talk about the match. Like, what are you going to do right here? Well, I'm going to try this and I'm going to try that. It's like, all right, nice.
Yeah.
It's an awesome thing.
And it's hard to remember such a big kid.
I know.
Just turned 15. He's still a little
gigantic
boy. He's still a little boy.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's what the Instagram's about. That's what we try to do. And it's so much fun doing it. And if anything, I have an archive. I hope to God Instagram never shuts down. Not because of anybody. I have a lot of shit on there.
You got to I know. You got to figure out a way to download.
I have it on my phone, but I'd have to search for all the stuff that we uploaded.
There's got to be a tool that actually will.
I'll find it.
Yeah.
I got to find it. Same because I have too much shit. Too many memories.
Me too. Yeah. I'm with you on that. Thanks for coming through. All right, today, brother.
Thank you,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Make sure you check out Joe's Instagram. Make sure you check out Inside BJJ. If you're out in Nashville, come and see us at 10th Planet Nashville. And if you're out in Stockton, if you're slumming in the hood for a funeral, a court date, or you get stalled out in the Central Valley, make sure you check out the boys at 10th Planet Stockton. We will catch you guys next time. I don't even know where we're going. There it is. All right, we're out.